I was stunned when, after 30 years of marriage, my cheating wife confessed. Her voice was shaking, but it wasn't from fear of losing me, it was from the weight of carrying this secret for so long. She told me it happened only once, but I knew from her eyes that once had stretched into years of silent guilt. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where we raised our children, shared birthdays, and pretended life was steady. And suddenly, every laugh, every smile across that table felt like it had been framed by a lie. She said she was lonely, that I had been too focused on work, that she needed someone to remind her she was still alive. The words cut, not just because she confessed to loving another man for a time, but because I realized I had missed the loneliness sitting right next to me. I wanted to scream, but instead, I sat in silence, listening to a truth that rewrote 30 years in a single evening. She cried, telling me she thought about confessing years ago, but didn't want to destroy our family. She chose silence then, but silence was the slowest form of destruction. I remembered vacations, holidays, our daughter's wedding. And I wondered, was she thinking of him while holding my hand? Did she smile at me with the same lips that whispered his name? That's the cruelty of betrayal. It doesn't just take away your trust. It kidnaps your memories. And yet, as much as anger burned in me, another feeling crept in grief. Grief for the woman I thought I knew. Grief for the life I thought we had. Grief for the version of me that still believed in her unwavering love. She begged for forgiveness, saying she had chosen me in the end. But I couldn't help but wonder, did she choose me, or did she simply choose the easier lie? That night I didn't sleep. I watched her lying beside me, the same woman I had built a life with, and I couldn't decide if she was a stranger or if I had simply never truly seen her. Infidelity isn't just about the body. It's about the quiet theft of trust, the slow erasing of certainty, the rewriting of every moment you thought was safe. And as I sat there in the dark, I realized the hardest part isn't that she cheated. The hardest part is learning sometimes. The real betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the years that followed, the silence that stretched between us like a shadow. I used to think our marriage was unshakable. 30 years of routines, holidays, birthdays, small fights, and bigger reconciliations. We looked like the picture of endurance. But what I didn't know was that a secret had been living with us all along. She laughed at my jokes. She touched my hand when no one was watching. She leaned her head on my shoulder during long car rides. And all the while, there was a truth she never let slip. That's what still haunts me. Not just that she strayed, but that she smiled with a secret locked behind her teeth. That for decades, I was sharing my life with someone who carried two versions of herself, the one I knew and the one she never let me meet. Every time I replay those years, I see details I didn't notice before. The moments when her eyes wandered past me, the phone calls she ended too quickly, the sudden excuses for being late. Back then, I dismissed them. Now they feel like ghosts tapping on my shoulder. Do you know what it's like to question your own memories? To take the happiest day of your life and wonder if it was staged, if behind the smile there was another story you weren't allowed to hear? That's the kind of wound silence leaves. It doesn't just scar the present, it infects the past. And I realize now betrayal doesn't start the day you find out. It starts the day they begin hiding it from you. From that moment forward, you are living in two different marriages, yours and theirs, only you don't know it yet. I thought I knew her. Every little habit, every sigh, every shift of her shoulders when she was tired. But the truth is, I didn't know her at all. Not the version of her who carried someone else in her heart. Not the version who could look at me, hold my hand, and still keep her silence. That's the weight of hidden years. It's heavier than the act itself, because once the truth comes out, you don't just mourn the betrayal. You mourn every moment you thought was real. She told me she didn't confess sooner because she didn't want to hurt me. But I see now that choice wasn't mercy, it was control. She decided which parts of our life were true, and which parts I would never get to touch. The hardest part isn't the cheating. The hardest part is that I never had the choice. She chose for me. She chose my reality, and I was living blind, while she carried the truth like a hidden flame in her chest. Sometimes at night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, and I feel the years pressing down on me. Not the ones ahead, the ones already gone, the ones that now feel tainted, twisted, rearranged by a truth that came too late. And I wonder, was I ever truly loved the way I loved her? Or was I just the safe place she came home to, after giving away pieces of herself I never knew existed? That's what hidden years do. They don't just steal your trust, they make you doubt your own memory, they make you question your own worth. They whisper to you in the dark. When the confession finally came, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It slipped out of her like a breath she had been holding for 30 years. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where we had blown out birthday candles, signed our daughters' report cards, shared cups of tea in the quiet mornings. That table had held our life, and now it was the stage for a truth that would shatter it. She didn't look me in the eye at first. She stared at her hands, turning her wedding ring slowly, as if she was winding back the years. And then, in a voice almost too soft to hear, she told me she had betrayed me. I remember the silence that followed. It wasn't just silence, it was the sound of 30 years collapsing. Every memory we had built together suddenly cracked under the weight of her words. I thought I would feel anger first, but I didn't. I felt disorientation, like someone had grabbed my entire past and spun it around until I couldn't tell which way was up. She said it had been long ago. She said it was only once, but her eyes told me otherwise. They held a grief too deep for a single mistake. They held the weight of a story that had stretched far longer than her words admitted. And as she spoke, I realized something cruel. The betrayal wasn't happening now. It had already happened, and I had lived through decades of it without knowing. That's what a confession like this does. It doesn't just break trust, it rewrites the past. Moments I thought were pure suddenly looked suspicious. The vacation where she smiled a little too much at her phone. The wedding where she cried during our daughter's vows. The nights when she said she was tired, and I believed her. All of it now painted in shadows I never saw coming. She told me she stayed because she loved me, that despite what she did, her heart was still here. But those words didn't soothe me. They pierced me deeper. Because if she loved me, why wasn't I enough? Why did she need to carry another man inside her memories while lying beside me at night? I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand every detail, but the truth is, I was afraid of the answers. Because once you start pulling at the thread of betrayal, you don't know how much of your life will unravel. So I sat there, staring at the woman I had called my wife for 3 decades, and I wondered if I even knew her name anymore. Not the one she signed on paper, but the one she carried inside, the name she whispered in secret. She cried while confessing, but her tears didn't comfort me. They felt like a luxury I wasn't allowed. Because, while she had 30 years to prepare for this moment, I had 30 seconds. She had lived with her truth. And I was just now being handed the ruins of it. That's the cruelty of a late confession. It doesn't just destroy the present, it poisons the past. It forces you to hold every memory you loved, and wonder if it ever truly belonged to you. That night, I looked at her lying beside me in bed, the same woman whose breath I had fallen asleep to for decades, and all I could think was how many nights did she lie here, pretending to be mine, while her heart was elsewhere. The confession didn't free me, it caged me, because now I was trapped between the life I thought I had and the truth she finally chose to tell, and the line between them was so blurred that I didn't know which one was real anymore. When she whispered, "I'm sorry," I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so small. 2 words for 30 years of hidden truth. 2 words to cover the cracks that had been spreading under my feet long before I noticed. And as I lay awake, staring into the dark, I realized something I'll never forget. Infidelity doesn't just break a promise. It rewrites your story. It takes the life you thought you lived and replaces it with a version you never chose. And once that truth is spoken, you can never go back. Not to the marriage you thought you had, not to the love you believed in, not even to the person you used to be.